Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Today, I've got a special treat for you. Our guest is Karen Sebesta, an industry veteran. She is currently the executive producer of special events and the Paralympics at CBC in Toronto. So tell me your thoughts on the television industry today as a business career for a young person getting into this industry.
Well, holistically, I think the broadcast industry and media has always had a sexiness and an appeal to it because it's about getting close to performers and athletes and, celebrities. And so there's a bit of a glamorous thing about it. And that part is interesting to young people. I think that there's an immediacy and an energy in the business that's exciting for young people. But from a financial perspective, I think it's a lucrative business. I think you absolutely can make money. You can raise a family. You can buy a home. But are you going to be rich beyond economic scales? Probably not. I think in Canada, it's conservative compared to the America, and maybe even places in Europe. So, our audiences are only so big here. Our production values are only so big. So I think it's a good business. And I think you can make a living, whether you're on staff somewhere or a freelancer. You can have a comfortable living. But unless you're owning your own company and really doing something unique and original, as we see on Netflix and certain things, I think it's sort of a safe business.
Okay. Tell me, how has technology changed opportunities in this business?
Well, and that's a really simple question with a really long answer that you could do. But the short version is that technology has changed and will continue to change and never stops changing. And in my life, 30 years of production, I've probably had about 10 different iterations of platforms from, 2-inch videotape to now, as we've seen, cloud-based nonlinear world. So what that's really done is, back in the day, even as simple as over a decade ago, there wasn't a lot of ways to get into the business. There was very traditional broadcast and traditional means of getting into the business. And what we've seen with the internet and social media now is that really anybody can truly be a producer and a content creator and have a voice. And the space is far bigger now. So that's positive because you have more room to explore, from podcasts to creating your own digital content online and having a YouTube channel. By the same token, more people get in, there's more space, and you really have to be able to stand out in that space to get the following or to get the traction that you may want. So, there's some positives, but with every positive change, there brings challenges. So at the end of the day, I still think it's a good thing, and I think there will be more changes. And sometimes the pendulum swings right back, and it will go back to, traditional broadcast again in a very simplistic way, because people get overloaded with all the technology. So I think that is the best answer. It has changed, it will change, and it will continue to change. So the successful people recognize that.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, would you say there are actually more job opportunities now because of technology?
Oh, 100%. I would. Absolutely. There are more jobs. Every single sport federation, and I'll speak within my expertise, which is the sports world, every sport federation has a website and a web page and does digital content and wants to have their branded content out there with their athletes. Every commercial company like Nike and Puma and all the brands have platforms and commercials and content and athlete connections. So they have all sorts of media-related jobs that are far bigger than they used to be. We've seen just traditional television news and broadcast has gone to digital and social and IGTV and all sorts of stuff. So every single broadcaster, every single sports franchise, every single sport federation, every single local regional things have a media platform now, usually social, and a digital platform. As well as their print and radio stuff. So back in the day, you had, three television networks to work for and a couple of newspapers. Now there's way more opportunity for work.
Has the basic writing and storytelling changed or gotten easier because of technology?
Basic storytelling is not changed because there's still an arc in a story. There's a beginning and there's a middle and there's an end. And that narrative has not changed. What has changed is how long it takes to execute that arc. So in traditional broadcast, we were used to seeing 1 hour shows or documentaries or films for 2 hours to get that narrative out. Where we are now is content in snackable form, which is in 30 seconds, can you get that story arc out? When you're doing something on IGTV or Instagram, or you're doing something in a social media graphic now, which is very popular. How do I just tell that story with just creating a frame and some words? And what image am I using? So the execution of the narrative has changed, yes.
So when we got into the business, and it's still this way in many ways, that people consider the main broadcasters, such as where you are, CBC, as your first step into the industry. How do you think, you mentioned, you touched on some others there, but getting into the business, where would you put your attention for basically starting your career?
So back in our day, the way you got in was certainly being a runner or some basic script writing, or we called them television assistants or production assistants. And sort of it was one sort of way in. Now there's more ways in. And I guess what I want to say is that representing CBC, we used to get in on local news. You would get in at your community level, your local level. And if you were going to end up getting to the national or network sports, that came later. But nowadays, the digital social world has become that local television way of getting in. So young people today get in organizations by being able to create graphics and understanding how to use Adobe Illustrator and doing simple graphics. They know how to use Media Composer or Avid or any other, Final Cut Pro system so that they can do laptop editing, being able to do small content that they can create and change into MP4s and get out there. Digital writing, like there's so much online news. So young person who's really wants to be a reporter or into news, being able to still have your writing skills and do the 4-paragraph story with the nut graph and the headline. And because digital writers, we need lots of people doing that kind of content because online. So again, even there, and then of course, social media, which again is Facebook, is Twitter, and not so much Twitter that I think in sports world is news, but Facebook and IGTV, being able to create that kind of content for those platforms. So right away there's all those jobs that you can do as a young person to get into the business. And really sort of traditional broadcast is moving towards more specialized and something that you kind of learn later when you are exposed to it. Because really we don't have as much traditional broadcast as we used to. So it's hard to start there.
So you've sort of touched on this, but you've had a very long and successful career in broadcasting. If you were to start today, would you say the road ahead of you would be easier or tougher than the one you've had to follow along?
If I was starting today, the path would be easier, no question.
Yeah. As well as, now you've touched all the different opportunities and avenues, but what about from the point of view of sort of the mentorship you got under a big umbrella and the small little steps that may not be there today, but that you had to take? Did that impact it, or you still think today is a better route, easier for them?
Entry is easier. Mentorship is a different kind of thing nowadays, because in my era, you absolutely started at the bottom and there were people just above you. And what we had steps. The hierarchy was really painted clearly. Like I said, you could start at local news and then you could go to sort of a mid-level show or a little bit more difficult project. And it sort of inched its way up before you sort of got to really the big projects, which, typically are things like Olympics or Stanley Cup finals or elections when I worked in news, or the entertainment shows like award shows, So, but now, the entry point is like, okay, you're doing graphics and you're doing graphics on a big show, Family Feud or Stanley Cup finals. Like, so it's sexier, right? Because you're in the project right away and you're already doing stuff and it seems really cool. And then, when you're young, you haven't got there yet where you're like, okay, I'm 5 years later and I'm still making graphics. Yeah. And then how do I pivot, right? So the pivoting is harder nowadays. And I guess I want to answer a question you didn't really ask, but what it is today young people are so skilled at all these different platforms because they can do it at home. You can have a Mac computer and do everything at home. Back in our day, you had to actually work in a broadcast facility to even see this equipment.
Right.
So young people come into the business and they're like, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. So their confidence is really high. And sometimes I have to say to young people, okay, I want you to be humble for a minute and actually think about that. Yeah, your idea is great, but here's how it fits into the big picture. So where they struggle, Rick, is they really still, as young people, don't see the big picture. Right. And my messaging always to young people is you got to get in someplace and start. And then you got to do your job well so people like your work, but then start looking around and see how the organization is structured, see the department, see the tentacles of the octopus and where they are, and start to look, wait a second, what would be my path? If I want to be a producer, young people think, yeah, but I edited this video on my laptop and I added font and graphic. I'm a producer. Yes, you are. But in the hierarchy of where you are, how do you get to really be a producer? And take some time and look at that path, because that's where it gets tricky. Young people can do multi things and it's awesome. But at some point you've got to pivot and be an expert, as you yourself know. We're always pivoting. It's good to do a few things, but if you're not an expert at something, be it producing, directing, audio technician, camera person, the trajectory of your career just won't get going, will it? You've got to pick something.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And we know that, obviously experience and hindsight does give us that ability, but I couldn't agree with you more there.
But we were told that in our generation, we were young. You got in at the basic level and very quickly you knew we're going to be an associate director. If you were an associate director and doing timing of live shows, you were going to end up being a director or maybe a producer. That was it. If you were a switcher, your avenue to be a director was there, but not really a producer. Probably it was going to be director. So if you were into font and graphics and that kind of storytelling, you could maybe be a producer, but you were never going to be a director. So it was very clear hierarchy. Now it's very gray because they come in and they are already creating lots of content and they have lots of abilities and they think, well, I am a producer, so I can produce. And, it's like, no, you actually can't.
So young people getting in today, we will say, have a lot of skills, a lot of different things they're touching on. Karen, tell me the top three, if you had to pick the top three skill sets that young people should look at honing getting into this career.
I'm going to say the top three things from my perspective, in my opinion, are, and I want to be clear about this because there are certain people out there that truly have a passion and know they want to be an editor, let's say. And so, their three skills I would tell them because of their passion would be different. But holistically, when you're young and you don't really know exactly what you want to do, I actually think one of the most important things is still writing. I think being able to write a sentence, formulate a thought, put some words together on paper and be able to articulate your desire will help you in any job. Being able to write, because a synopsis, a pitch, an idea, I think don't give up your writing skills while you're in school. I encourage everyone to still keep writing. Even if it's journaling, keep your writing up. This industry has a tendency to get people to stop writing. Never stop writing. As a producer, I write all the time. I don't always have a writer on the show. When I'm pitching ideas, I have to do a brief and write. So be able to write. That's number one. Number two, be able to articulate your vision and your desire and what you want. Be able to articulate yourself. Young people today have a real hard time pitching, saying what they mean, saying what they want. telling someone like me, oh, I want to be a producer, what does that mean? Actually be able to articulate what you want to do. I love meeting people and telling stories. I love working as a team. I love being given an assignment and then thinking about it for a while. So really be able to articulate yourself and really articulate what you want. And even if you don't want or don't know what you want, be able to articulate that. So writing skills, articulate yourself, communication wise. And the third thing is, I'm struggling between, and what is the word? You do have to have a confidence to put yourself out there and not be afraid and to try something new. Even humbly not going to be the best at it, but you're going to try that. You can't be afraid. There's too much technology. There's too many deadlines and things. And, if you're too afraid and too uncertain and you want to be perfect, so what is that word? It's confident, but not arrogance.
Willing to take risk.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is willing to take risk with a sense of confidence too. I do think you need that in this business because it's not for everybody. Some people need a solid framework and solid parameters. Mm-hmm. And you don't always get the guidance. When you asked about mentoring, that's still a tough one in this business. A lot of times it still is sink or swim, or here, I told you, do it. So quiet confidence and a willingness to put yourself out there, however that is interpreted to you, I think that's what it is.
Right. Karen, that is great. Those are 3 great final points to end this on. That is fabulous. Thank you so much for taking time with me today. You've had some great points, and I'm sure our audience will enjoy hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Rick, for having me. It's a pleasure. And I still feel as someone who's, yes, you get to this point, you have 30 years in the business, but you still want to have a few more. You still feel like you have ideas and be creative. And I am so encouraging of young people. I think so many people, even back in our day, Rick, people would say like, oh, it's a tough business to get into. It's tough to make it. And you know what? I really don't believe that. If you're passionate about things and you have ideas with radio and podcasts and social, and I think it's a fabulous time to be young and coming into this business. Don't worry about the pandemic. There's always going to be something, right? There's strikes, there's wars, there's boycotts. There's always something, an obstacle to overcome. So learn to overcome it and pivot, and you'll be fine. Trust me, you'll be fine.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks so much, Karen. This has been great.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Karen today. Before you leave, please check out one of the other videos you see here on the screen. I think you'll enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm putting out videos on a regular basis, and I'm sure you'll find them helpful. And a thumbs up, always appreciated. Thanks for watching.